At this time, we will begin with public comments. Due to the large number of individuals wishing to speak tonight, and in the interest of time, we will be allowing a minute and a half per speaker, and Mr. Cornett is going to be timing. The rules of order and decorum will be enforced during the public comment period to ensure an efficient meeting. Unlawful or disruptive conduct, including interrupting scheduled speakers, speaking out of turn, or interrupting with the rights of others, will not be tolerated. And on a side note, I appreciate you all for caring about our students, because I know every single person in this audience cares about our students. We may have different opinions, but I hope we can sit and listen respectfully to each of those opinions. So I'm going to call people up in the order that I received these. And again, Mark will stop you if you go past your minute and a half. We're starting with Christine.
Shout out to the Gillespie County High School. One of the kids I mentor graduated from there, and she loved it. So there you go. Okay, well, hello. My name is Christine Granados. Can everybody hear me?
You can pick it up and use it. It's live. Hello?
Oh, okay. Got it. Sorry. Shout out to Gillespie County High School. They did do an awesome job. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Christine Granados, and I'm a Fredericksburg resident, and I'm a parent who supports public schools. And thank you for hearing me out today. It's my place, my right, my duty to help my kids make the best choices for themselves in accordance with my husband and my beliefs and values, to help them be the best people that they can be. It is not my right to force my beliefs and values on every other parent and their children simply because it's how we do things at our house or at our church. That's censorship. And censorship has no place in the public school setting, which is expressly designed to consider the viewpoints of all students. This district is made up of all types of people: Christian, Muslim, Judaism, Buddhist, atheist, straight, LGBTQ, students with gender identity issues, black, white, brown, yellow, the economically disadvantaged, the economically advantaged, cheerleaders, athletes, musicians, and many more not mentioned here. And all those students have existed in this school system for 40 plus years without any issues related to books on library shelves. And it is only in this school year that there's been an issue with books on library shelves. I just want to submit a petition of 200 Fredericksburg residents who support books in libraries.
Thank you. And the board did get that list. Thank you. Next is Annette Bennett.
Hi, Annette Bennett, Fredericksburg. When I was first made aware of the pornography in the schools, I sent an email to each of the school board members. I would like to thank Mark Cornett, Natalie Bowman, and Corinne Herber for replying. They were the only ones. By offering books that are not age appropriate and pornographic, children are being desensitized to sex. And the schools are endorsing sexual acts such as pedophilia and rape. Children are being indoctrinated by the schools, and the parents are being removed from the responsibility of raising their children and their values. Parents cannot exercise parenting when they don't know what's being taught or offered. Public schools are failing children by focusing on left-wing social issues instead of academics. I believe that age-appropriate sexual health materials can be in our school libraries, but that sexual rights books should be reviewed and reflect the values and morals of our community. So where does the responsibility fall? The booksellers say they don't review the books they sell. The librarian may be buying books in bulk. So it seems to me that the accountability falls on the school board. And of course, the board members are accountable to the parents and to the voters. I urge the board to listen to the parents and work with them to remove books that are not age appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you. Next is Matt Long.
Thank you. My name is Matt Long. I'm a member of the community, and I want to read this from school, a book in the middle school. Lick it, he says in his thick voice. Pressing my head toward it, I stare at Scott's penis. There's a pearl balanced on the tip, on the tan tip. It smells like liverwurst. Like a lollipop, he's begging now, breathing hard. He wags his penis with his hand to get my attention. Page 132. Ready, he asks. I nod. He pushes my thighs apart with his knees and spits into his hands and wipes it between my legs before lowering himself onto me and prodding my inner thighs with his dick. Stop biting me, he says, as I scoot away from his fumbling. You'll only make it worse. These are books out of our middle school library. About a year ago, this book right here was taken off the shelves and out of bookstores clear across the country without a moment of anybody reviewing these books. You cannot buy these books. They were taken out of every single bookstore in the country. You can't buy it on Barnes & Nobles. You can't buy it on Amazon. Let me read some sections of it to you. Let's see, we'll just pick it up. All the long way to school and all the way back, I've looked and I've looked and I've kept careful track, but all I've noticed except my own feet was a horse and a wagon on Mulberry Street. You tell me which one's appropriate in the middle school. Thank you.
Next we have, I think it's Liam Mathis.
I'm Liam Mathis. I'm a student here. Just to address the last guy, he mentioned a bunch of like private stores and stuff. It's completely within the rights of private entrepreneurship to ban books they don't deem fit to be read, but he didn't say anything about public libraries and stuff, so that's different. What we're talking about here is public domain, and it still falls under the jurisdiction of the Constitution. So the board's decision in this matter is a unique one, as its educational powers extend over almost all of the district. But the arguments presented by the opposing side have left out what can hardly be an equivocal fact. Their selection of books isn't part of any curriculum. Their selection of books from our libraries is entirely a matter of free choice. The libraries afford students an opportunity at self-education and individual enrichment that is entirely optional. The ideas presented in these books, as I quote from two people already, actually no, only one person, offend values and morals, as stated by the opposition. They seek the removal of books not on the measure of their educational value, but on the offensiveness of their content. A case exactly like this one was brought before the Supreme Court. It's called Island Tree District versus, it's like Chips or something like that. Pico, thank you. Yeah, but they ruled in favor of the students because it wasn't, they weren't banning it because, you know, it was hurting the student or anything. They didn't have any facts to.
Mr. Mathis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I thought it was fun.
Next we have Christa Allen.
Good evening. My name is Christa Allen, and I would like to read a couple of excerpts from Jesus Land, which fortunately Matt stole my thunder. He's read two excerpts. I'll read a couple others. It's in our middle school, and it's available to our children as young as 11 years old. Right. Okay. I've heard girls giggle about blowjobs at school. It's something a boyfriend requires of you. Open your mouth, God said, and I do. He puts it between my lips, grabs my hair, and pulls my head up and down on it. A moment later, he groans, and something slimy spurts into my mouth that tastes like pool water. Other girls were also molested by male relatives living in their households, and this surprises me, since they all come from upstanding Christian families. But then again, so do I. Our preacher at Escuela Carib gets a student pregnant. Secretly, I admire Rhonda's craftiness. Not only did she manage to get laid, she also escaped the program. She could always give the baby up for adoption and resume her life afterward, or she could abort it. I'm sure God would also reject the forbidden fruit of a preacher man and a teenage member of his flock.
Thank you, Ms. Allen.
Thank you.
Next is Jeremy Simon.
Evening, my name is Jeremy Simon. I'm a 20-year Navy veteran. I got deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm also a Texas licensed professional counselor. I'm also a licensed Texas professional counselor and chemical dependency counselor. The acts that are listed in the book Crank not only glamorize but normalize the acceptance of rape and drug use, which can not only be triggering to many, but it allows it to continue to happen. This is a generational thing. Oh God, there it goes. It went all right. It went with an audible tear. Pain mushroomed into agony, and all I could do was go stiff. You weren't lying, you bitch. I laid there, sobbing, as he worked, and sweated over me. Stoked by the monster, it took him a long time to finish. Give me a line. I'll give you an encore. He pulled away, sticky and bloody, throbbing inside his elbow. I didn't move. I didn't dare look him in the eye. I have worked with survivors of rape, molestation. Some of the things you hear, you cannot unhear. This is available to our students in our grade school. This normalizes the act. That can't be allowed. I'm not against books. I think they just need to be age appropriate. Thank you.
Next is Philip Smith.
Good evening, Philip Smith, Lieutenant Colonel, retired United States Army. I'm going to read from Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is available to our Fredericksburg Middle School and high school students. The scenario is Charlie's watching two of his friends have sex. When most people left, Brad and Patrick went to Patrick's room. They had sex for the first time that night. I don't want to go into detail about it because it's pretty private stuff. But I will say that Brad assumed the role of the girl in the terms on where to put things. I think it was pretty important to tell you that. When they were finished, Brad started crying really hard. He had been drinking a lot and getting really stoned. No matter what Patrick did, Brad kept crying. Brad wouldn't let Patrick hold him, which seems rather sad because if I have sex with someone, I would want to hold them. Finally, Patrick just pulled up Brad's pants and said, "Just tell him he passed out." Another reading from the same book. I didn't say why or not. I didn't see why not. So they closed the door and started kissing very hard. After a few minutes, the boy's hand went up the girl's shirt and they started protesting. "Come on, Dave, what? The kids are here, it's okay." And the boy kept working up the girl's skirt as much as she said no. He kept working it. After a few minutes, she stopped protesting and pulled her shirt off. And she had on a white bra with lace. I honestly didn't know what to do at this point. Pretty soon, he took off her bra and started kissing her breasts. And then he put his hand down her pants and she started moaning. I think they were pretty drunk. He reached to take off her pants, but she started crying really hard.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Next we have Elisa Smith.
Hi, I'm a Fredericksburg parent, military, wife of a retired military person, injured over in Afghanistan and Iraq. We have sacrificed greatly for the freedoms of our country. We are not asking for book banning or burning. We are asking for age appropriateness. I'm going to read from you excerpts from The Glass Castle. This is available at Fredericksburg Middle School and Fredericksburg High School. 11-year-olds can read this book. I'd been gone for a minute or two when I heard Brian weekly protesting. I went into Grandpa's bedroom and saw Irma, which is Grandma, kneeling on the floor in front of Brian, grabbing the crotch of his pants, squeezing and kneading, while mumbling to herself and telling Brian to hold still. GD, Brian, his cheeks were wet with tears, was holding his pants protectively between his legs. Irma, you leave him alone, I shouted. Irma, still on her knees, twisted around and glared at me. Why, you little bitch, she said. Lori heard the commotion and came running. I told Lori that Irma was touching Brian in a way she ought not to be. Mom, Uncle Stanley is also behaving inappropriately, I said. Oh, you're probably imagining it, he said. He groped me, and he's wanking off. Mom cocked her head and looked concerned. Poor Stanley, she said. He's so lonely. Mom, it was gross. Mom asked me if I was okay. I shrugged and nodded. Well, there you go, she said. She said that sexual assault was a crime of perception. If you don't think you're hurt, then you aren't.
Next is Haley Knudsen.
Hi, my name is Haley Knudsen. I'm currently a junior at Fredericksburg High School. I'll be the first to say I'm not a prude, and I'm one of the first to say that's what she said joke while sitting around with my friends. And I'm not inclined to judge anyone based off of their beliefs on what they think is right or wrong. It's not my place, but a line must be drawn somewhere. As a kid, I had a very active imagination. Back in elementary school, I picked up a read about aliens and paranormal activity. And when I tell you I was mortified, to put it lightly, I couldn't look at a green light without being scared and fearful that an alien invasion was going to happen to somebody like me. Now imagine how some of these kids might feel about reading that some of their teachers are molesting students and personal close family members are raping and tormenting in graphic detail. If I was scared about encountering something as small as an alien invasion in my town, imagine how these kids must feel about reading all these actual real-world experiences. It would be hard to trust and recover from that. And these situations need to be discussed, but it needs to be in a much appropriate atmosphere around parents, and these traumas should not be unpacked with just students figuring it out on their own, especially at such a young age. And don't get me wrong, I love a good romance novel, but the line must be, it's being crossed whenever it's instilling feelings of just sexual lust along a reader in an elementary school. I'm a firm believer on freedom of speech. If you want to read those books that instill sexual actions, that is not my place to say it's wrong. But for it to be placed in the hands of minors and placing inherent sexual thoughts in their young minds, it doesn't sit right with me. When these kids haven't even experiences their first crushes yet.
Thank you, Ms. Knudsen.
Thank you.
Next is Tracy Knudsen.
I'm going to let Haley finish what she was reading.
I cannot, and I apologize because that was my mistake at a previous meeting. You can't give your minutes to someone else.
Okay. Well, then I'll read it for her. It does not sit right with me when these kids have not even experienced their first crush yet. I'm not going to sit up here with this holier-than-thou speech and promote that these types of books should be banned from the whole city of Fredericksburg, but they definitely shouldn't be easily accessible to our young community at a school of all places. I am one to look at both sides of an argument. I know reading the title of book ban and removal at FISD school district sounds like a lot like the beginning of Fahrenheit 451 situation, but it's hard to believe these sexually graphic books are allowed in our school. Why I can't go to school with my shoulders out. I'm not saying that every book involving adult topics or relationships should be banned, don't get me wrong, but we need to look more thoroughly into where the line is drawn here. I think young age, we still need to grow and expand our knowledge while reading, but when porn is being described to elementary school students, I don't think these topics should be readily available in school without adults knowing. Thank y'all for listening. And that's from Haley.
Next we have Edith, is it Ines? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, my name is Edith McCandless. I'm here to join the efforts of others for the need of removing pornographic material from our public school libraries. I cannot understand any line of thought that would champion, justify, or allow the material you are hearing tonight to be kept within reach of our children. I appeal to all of you to make the removal of this type of literature a simple process, and do it now. None of this content is helpful, appropriate, decent, or fit for youngsters. The part that I have to read is distasteful. I hate to do this, I'm going to. We need to acknowledge, first of all, that this is in our schools, and then we need to resolve to get it removed. What I'm reading is from a book called Looking for Alaska. It's available in both our high school and our middle school here in Fredericksburg. The noted concerns here are sex between children, children watching a pornographic video, children discovering how to give oral sex. And before I read the excerpts that I have, I want to note that there's a long list of awards given to this book, including from ALA, Best Book for Young Adults Top 10. Hear what's inside. Alaska read the sticker on top of the video, the bitches of Madison County. Well, ain't that just delightful? We ran with it to the TV room, closed the blinds, locked the door, and watched the movie. It opened with a woman standing on a bridge with her legs spread while a guy knelt in front of her, giving her oral sex. No time for dialogue, I suppose. I was already looking, needless to say. A woman crouched on her hands and knees while a guy knelt behind her.
Thank you, Ms. McCollum.
Next is Jerry Farley.
It's been a long time since my daughter was in the Fredericksburg Independent School District, but I'd moved here from Houston to get her in a better environment. And that's what we expect as parents, and that's what you are responsible for. What I've heard, is out of the bounds of what decency is all about. My standard is a little bit higher than no pornography. My standard is family friendly. I think books in your library should be family friendly. Simple as that. You know, I'm a reader. I threw the TV out in 1970, the year my daughter was born, because I didn't want to have a bad influence for her. And she grew up without TV. I still don't have a TV. I'm a reader. And I know how impressionable things out of books are for young children. So I ask you to think about it yourself and do something about this.
Next is Elisa Smith.
Hi, my name is Elisa Smith, and I'm a resident taxpayer, mom, and grandmother. According to the National Coalition to Prevent Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation, prolonged and increased exposure to sexually explicit materials can lead to exaggerated beliefs of sexual activity among peers, sexually permissible attitudes, and sexual callousness, including more negative attitudes towards sexual partners. Adolescents are normalizing sexual abuse done to them because of pornographic exposure. Females are especially prone to the normalization of sexual promiscuity, which heightens their risk of being victims of unwanted sexual violence and of sexually transmitted diseases. Don't we as adults have a responsibility to protect them from these consequences, as well as follow the law? Ladies and gentlemen, we are not following the law. In the spirit of excellence, I as a taxpayer am not willing to blindly continue to write a check to this school district if you continue to shirk your responsibilities. And I lay this responsibility squarely at your feet, not at your librarians. You hired these people, and then it's their job to take care of this. Matthew 18:6 says, "Things that cause people to stumble are bound to come, but woe to anyone through whom they come."
Thank you.
Next is John Quinn.
Thank you all very much for giving me your time to speak just for me. I think we've heard enough out of the books that we're exposing our kids to. And I just want to ask you guys, women and men both, county commissioners, all boards, it's time for us to stand up and say no, and push back on this stuff. They've been pushing this on us for 40-something years. And it's time to say no. It's time for everybody to stand up and hold your ground and say, no, we're not going to do this. And I ask you, before y'all vote on this, to ask God if it's good with him. And I think you can vote your heart then, and I think you'll vote the right way. Thank you very much for your time.
Next is Eileen Whited.
Good evening. I felt compelled this evening to address you on behalf of the patrons of the FISD libraries, the students. I would like to make a few points. First of all, the First Amendment legally protects intellectual freedom, which includes the student's right to read. It prohibits the government and its agencies, which includes the school district, to restrict students' access to information. The Supreme Court ruled in the Tinker case of 1969 that students do not, quote, shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. Any removal of a book based on an individual's disagreement with its political, religious, or moral viewpoint is censorship and banning. Objections that lead to the removal or restricted access to the questioned material for all students holds the views of one person above all of the others' rights, and it offends everyone else's First Amendment right to read. I need to remind our FISD parents that you do have the right to control what your child reads, but you do not have the right to control what other children read. We're not talking about required reading tonight, we're talking about library books. If you don't like a book, you can return it. There's no rule that if you check out a book, you have to read the whole thing. Also, if parents do not want their child to read books with certain content, all they have to do is let the librarian know, and the librarian will guide them.
Next is David Morgan, Jr.
Howdy, David Morgan Jr. For most of you, it's the first time I've seen y'all and you've seen me, but you may recognize me. I was the guy standing in the back of the room, hoping that time would run out before you called my name. There's all kinds of things to talk about that you can argue either side of the issue as it relates to the books that have been mentioned tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, Leslie Morgan, and our concern is strictly the obscene content. One, we think that it goes against federal law to have obscene content in the school libraries. It, second, goes against at least one or two of the core values that the district has of respect, integrity, students first, and excellence. And I had a good third point. You're just going to have to trust me that it was good. Because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around some of the stuff that I was going to read tonight. Thank you for cutting the time down. This book is Later Gator. It's in the high school library. The first line here of this particular page says, "I'm kind of wired." This is one kid talking to another. "I'm kind of wired. I just gave Doug his very first blowjob." Awesome. So I'm not sure which core value that we go into, but perhaps others could figure it out.
Thank you,
This
Mr.
other
Morgan.
book, thank you. Happy night.
Next, we have Tom Marshall.
My name's Tom Marshall. I am a resident of Fredericksburg. We all have opinions and feelings about this subject. However, we are a nation and a state of laws. It is a crime to distribute pornography pornographic materials to minors. Yes, there is an exception for government entities where there is an educational or scientific value applied. Having a book sitting on a library shelf does not include an instructor to teach the value of that book. Having books on the library fail the exemption clause of the illegality of providing pornographic materials to students. We can either abide by our laws or we can ignore them. I think if you look at history, you'll see the danger of ignoring our laws. If we have feelings, we need to talk to our legislators and get those laws changed. Addressing these feelings to you, the school board, is not going to change the laws. We should abide by our laws. Thank you.
Next, we have Mary Lee Marshall.
I'm Mary Lee Marshall. I live in the city. I'm hearing that there is no process for selecting books by which the taxpayers have, which, by the way, the taxpayers have to pay for the school libraries. Maybe that's why there's so much garbage on the shelves. I doubt that any teacher, administrator, or school board member will ever admit they think this trash is appropriate for school kids, and probably most don't. And yet here it is. Every book accepted by the public school library should be read and reviewed by at least 2 school board members and 2 SHAC members. As far as the middle school and the bond, I know the middle school is terribly inadequate, but as bad as it is, it at least has the integrity of a good foundation. You should be embarrassed to ask for $1 from this county to finance a new building for disseminating fear and evil anymore.
And last, we have Steve Taylor.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to speak here today. I am a Fredericksburg resident and voter, and I'll be brief. No one turns gay by reading a school library. No one changes their gender by reading a school library. No one becomes less of a human being by being open to people who are different. What library books can and should do is awaken young readers to different ideas outside of their own world. That is knowledge. It can lead to questions and discussions with parents, peers, and others, so that young minds flourish and ask questions and keep up with students in other schools across Texas, across the U.S., and across town. Banning books makes our students unprepared for what they aspire to be. Banning books promotes ignorance. Ignorance is not what Fredericksburg schools should be fostering. Thank you.
Thank you for all your comments. We're going to move into new business, and we are going to move 7J up to the front. That's consideration and possible action of revisions to local board policy EF.
Thank you, Madam President. As you've heard from a variety of comments tonight, there are concerns regarding policy EF local, and I'm speaking in terms of policy this evening. We have heard multiple sides. We've had information come from multiple parties, multiple individuals, multiple groups, and we have done a lot of research when it comes to what is within the law, what are some of the exceptions. But before we get started, I want Assistant Superintendent Robin Darrington to give us an overview of what we've done thus far, because I think it's important for the community and the board to hear what we've done to understand what we are asking for with the changes to board policy EF local. So I'm going to pass it on to Robin, have her share her part of the conversation, and then I will end the conversation.
So upon receiving the list of books that were deemed appropriate, the books were temporarily removed for review. Students have not had access to those books pending the review process, so that's the first thing that y'all need to. Can y'all hear me? Okay, I'll repeat. Upon receiving the list of materials that were deemed inappropriate, the books were temporarily removed for review. So students have not had access to those books pending the review, so that's the first thing we wanted to make sure that you understood that. And then the challenge that we have had, while policy existed, there were no procedures in place for library book selection or challenging instructional materials. So procedures for challenging instructional materials have been created, and then the procedures for book selection are in a draft. Right now, we're working on that. So for example, our current process has been that the library book selection has been at the campus discretion. So we're working on the book selection draft right now, and it should be complete by the end of probably next week or so. It should be complete by the end of the week or so. So that's the process we've done so far.
Okay, so knowing that we've had a policy in place since 2017, there's been a lack of procedures to vet books coming in. In addition, I do want to add that we currently only have one librarian in the entire district. So we have found evidence as well that we can do a better job in vetting some of the books that are coming in. And that is the rationale for the procedures, is to ensure that we are able to filter some of the books that are coming in. I want to specifically point, I'm not too sure where she's at, but we did have someone comment about the filtering process, and that is what the procedures, that is the intent of the procedures. I do want to speak about policy, and I think it's important that the board and the community understand the changes that are being recommended tonight. First, the original policy, or as it stands today, prior to a possible approval, the original policy mandated that there be one committee per campus if there was going to be a challenge for a book. Policy also mentions that there was a form to be filled out. There not being any procedures in place, there was no form to be filled out. That has since been corrected, and it's going to be corrected even more because we've received information that the form as it exists today is lengthy in nature, and we've identified that that is an issue. But specifically to this policy, one of the recommendations coming out from administration is that there not be one campus committee, that there be two committees for the entire district, specifically one elementary, one secondary. The rationale behind that is, after speaking to administration, if we currently have one librarian in our school district, and we only have one assistant superintendent for teaching and learning in our school district, requesting that these individuals be a part of 5 different committees simultaneously would tie up a lot of their time. And yes, it is a part of their duties and responsibilities, but we felt that it would suit us best if we had 2 committees that we focus solely on the elementary and another committee to focus solely on the secondary, thus combining middle school and high school. So that is one major change to existing policy. The other change that is being recommended is that in our policy, it's important that everybody understand that there are First Amendment rights. You've heard that from the community tonight. You've also heard that from other types of communication. But school officials do have discretion. We do have discretion when it comes to pervasively vulgar material. We also have discretion when it comes to books, any type of literature that is not suitable educationally for our students. So there is discretion as far as what school officials can and cannot do. So one of the other recommended changes is going to be that anytime there's a concern, current policy states that it goes to the campus principal. What we are adding to the policy is that a campus principal will have 5 days to review the material themselves, thus allowing a campus principal, which we consider a school official, to have the discretion needed to identify whether the book is pervasively vulgar or not suitable for the students at their grade level or at their campus. The other major change is that we are recommending that the reconsideration committee, once created, that within 30 calendar days that they're able to review the book in question. There is no time limit in the policy as it exists today. We have temporarily removed books so that they can be reviewed, but we also know it's important to put an end date to all of that. So it doesn't allow the books to just continue to be off the shelf. It allows the committee to quickly get together, review the items, and to make a decision and ultimately provide a recommendation. The other component that is, and the last component as far as the recommended changes to policy is, I stated earlier, there is discretion for school officials that currently exists when we are talking about books and materials that are pervasively vulgar, identified pervasively vulgar, and not educationally suitable for our students. Administration has that authority. So all we are doing and what we are recommending is that we grab that information and we make it a part of policy. And I hate saying this, but Joe Rodriguez will not be here 20 years from now, I don't believe. There are going to be other administrations that are going to come here, and we want to ensure that any future administrations, any future board recognize and understand the conversations that we've been having as a community now, and that they understand the flexibility that administrators have even then. So because of that, we are recommending that we add language identifying that school officials can remove books if they are pervasively vulgar and they are not suitable educationally for students. I'm going to pass it on to Robin so she can share a little bit of what has occurred with some of the school officials, some of the administrators at central office.
In light of the information we received, administration has determined that there are some texts that are pervasively vulgar, that are not educationally suitable, and in some cases sexually explicit. And these books will be permanently removed because there is no place for them in our libraries.
That is where we are at today. We have a long list of books that are going to be reviewed. But what we are going to do is, if approved, if U.S. trustees approve this policy, we will quickly finalize all procedures. We will quickly identify the individuals that are going to be a part of the committees, and we will start the review process for all the other books on the list. At this moment in time, we have received information. We have received articles, clips of the different books, and administration has determined that that some of these books need to be permanently removed from our libraries. So at this time, that is all the information the administration has for the board.
Dr. Rodriguez, may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Has any form been completed and going through the process, the formal process? Has anybody filled out a form other than giving us a list for a book to be reviewed?
Ms. Darrington, you want to?
3 forms were filled out by one individual.
3 forms, so is that 3 books? So 3 books of 40-something books. I want to make this really clear. It's not that I support pornography in any way, so let me first start with that. We have a duty to also protect anybody who says, I don't want a book about God on this shelf because they're atheists and don't agree with that point of view, to be able to come in here and say, take off all books that reference any sort of God off of our shelf as well, right? So this is not as simple. There's a reason why we have a form. There's a reason there's a procedure and a policy for this. It's because we're trying to project both sides of things. Would I want my child, because I have kids at every single campus except for Stonewall, reading some of these books? No, but it's my duty as a parent to have those conversations with my kids and understand what they're checking out and have regular conversations with my kids. It's also, what if somebody came and said, you know, I really Holocaust was really horrible, and I don't want them to learn about the Holocaust and the effects of Holocaust. We have to be very careful because this is a very slippery slope if we just start removing every book that anybody requests. And I made it really clear, I do not support pornography, but we need to follow a process to protect all literature so that we don't lose our history.
And I do want to say, I appreciate what you just said. I think it's important for the board and the community to understand we are not here to draw a line between viewpoints. We acknowledge that there are different viewpoints. Where we are drawing a line, our recommendation, the line is being drawn when it comes down to material that is pervasively vulgar and identified as not educationally suitable for our students. So that is where we're drawing the line. But I appreciate the comments.
And Joe, just to clarify, from what Robin said, all the books in question have been off the shelves for approximately 2 weeks.
The list was provided in February, and we had no procedure in place, and we also, because of the nature of the issue, and we had never had any instructional materials ever challenged before, we had to seek out legal consult, and so it took a little bit of time to get a forum in place, a website where people could challenge materials and get advice from the legal team.
So yes, to answer your question, those books have not been available. I can't give you the exact date, but I can say it's been at least, I want to say 3 to 4 weeks that those books have been temporarily removed. They were removed for the initial review process to begin. So yes, they've been unavailable to students.
Can you clarify the form issue? Because apparently the forms were available because there were people lost, but there were 3 forms that were filled out. I'm sorry, are you supposed to be talking? I'm just confused about the form issue. It's an important point.
Sir, they give you the right to speak.
I would recommend that you call the school district office in the morning and they can provide you that clarification.
Yes,
sir.
Joe, is there anybody in the school district that you know of that is, the books that you identified as pervasively vulgar, have you identified anybody that has suggested we keep them on the shelf?
Specific books specifically, no.
So the concerns that were expressed, you were concerned when you first heard that from the first person. And
Yes.
there was never a pushback to keep them on the shelves.
No, there's been a general pushback regarding what is perceived as the banning of books, but our focus has been on, I'm going to say it one more time because I think it's important, what is pervasively vulgar and what is educationally suitable for our students. So that has been our focus. Yes, you may.
I just wanted to, Brent, I appreciated your comments. I just want to make one comment. Corinne, I really appreciated your comments, and I appreciate all the parents, regardless of what side they're on, caring enough about their kids to make a case for them. But I also want to make a call out because I heard a lot of you guys talking about the middle school, and I also want to talk about our kids learn from bathroom walls, and they learn from multimedia, take their phones. But I also want to call out to Cheryl in the middle school, all the good work they've done around teaching our kids about social media. So my point with this is the school is trying to do the right thing, and that's evidenced by the programs they're bringing and policies like this that they're putting forward. So thank you guys for listening.
Dr. Joe, legal has reviewed this policy, correct?
Yes, they have. Yes, legal has reviewed.
In that case, I'd move that we adopt the modifications to the policy as presented.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Okay, moving on the consideration and approval of the request for the band and choir to travel out of state to go to Disney in the spring of 2023.